Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dynasty Gambit, presented by Going for Two Live. My name is Kyle Senra, and joining me are, of course, as always, the Fantasy Sports Doc, ding, 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 Dr. Jim Ferretti. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing well, Kyle. I had a thought that the Dynasty Gambit is, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember this. We're kind of turning it into Menudo. It's like there's a new lineup every week. But I'm excited to be here and ready to talk some post-draft rookie stuff. And yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll.
Menudo, isn't that Ricky, what's his face? Wasn't he in that?
Yeah, he was in there for a while. Ricky Martin was in there for a while.
Ricky Martin. Okay, yeah.
I don't know which one of us
I am apparently old enough to know.
I don't know which one of us is Ricky Martin in that analogy, but I'll leave that to the viewers.
Well, actually, I would say it's probably this guy, the Fantasy G DFS.
Might just say.
Yeah, Gerson, how are you doing? I don't know if you want to be known as Rookie, Ricky, or just Gerson, but welcome to the Gambit.
Fantasy G or Gerson Aguirre, you can find me on Twitter at Fantasy G DFS. Man, I'm ready to do this rookie. Last 3 weeks have been insane. Draft. Move your ranking, adjust everything. I love this part of the season.
Yeah, things changing. Talked about that. So, for anyone who has seen recent episodes, first off, Gerson was on just before the draft on the most recent episode. So, welcome back, I suppose, even though I wasn't on there. Weird for me to be saying that, but I have guested on a couple episodes so far, but change is coming and change is permanent now. So thanks, Doc, for letting me join in a permanent fashion. So I will now be a permanent co-host on the Gambit. So
yes,
yay.
Welcome aboard, man. It's great. It's great to officially be able to welcome you. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. I'm choked up. But yeah, it's a big honor. So hopefully I don't mess up. But I guess a few things. Actually, Doc, you wanted to talk about something in particular, so I'll let you take the lead here and just give us your thoughts on this idea you want to bring up.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, I want to kind of put this out there for you guys and get your opinion. But I had a thought as I was after we went through the draft and we had all this build up to it, and then we kind of saw how the landing spots, especially for running backs, didn't work out quite the way that we might have wanted. And specifically, I kept hearing on post-draft analysis, this idea of this guy got low draft capital, so therefore I'm down on him. And I had a couple of thoughts about that. And this is what I kind of wanted to bring to the table. So one is, how much did COVID affect things this year? Last year and going into this year, as far as draft evaluation, scouting, players opting out, recency bias, did that affect things maybe more than we're letting on, and maybe we need to adjust based on that? Or this other idea that I had is when we talk about real life football versus fantasy football, we always get upset when things make football sense, but they don't make fantasy sense. I think about Kenyon Drake going to the Raiders, and it makes good football sense, but it doesn't make great fantasy sense and kind of messes up both of their values. But we always want the NFL GMs and the coaches to play football more like we play fantasy football. And it occurred to me, what if they did? And here's what I mean. When you think about when you're drafting, let's say you have a block of players and you're okay with taking any of them, and there's multiple players. Maybe you're thinking they're going to go at a certain point in the draft, and you're kind of playing chicken with the other owners in the league or the other drafters. And it's I'm not taking any of these guys until a run starts, and then I'll take one. And I'm not going to start the run necessarily. I won't be the last one, but I'm going to get somebody in there. And in the meantime, I'm going to fill other areas. So what if that's what the NFL GMs did, and all these guys that ended up getting lower draft capital in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, that was just because that's when guys started going. We kind of had the big three, and they all went relatively early, 1st, 2nd round. ETN, Najee Harris, and Javonte Williams. And then Michael Carter got jumped up by the Jets. But everybody else kind of languished for rounds after rounds, and then finally started getting taken And I was just kind of curious about that. It's like, what do you guys think about those ideas that maybe draft capital, lower draft capital, isn't quite as important this year, and maybe we need to kind of readjust and pivot off of that, go somewhere else with it. Maybe look more at our pre-draft rankings and give a little bit more weight to that, and also paying attention to the landing spots and the opportunities that may present themselves. So I leave that to you guys.
So are we going away basically from what we're doing in fantasy then? Is that what this is basically?
Well, it's just a question. So I'm curious as to your thoughts as to how that lands with you.
Oh man, I'm trying to digest this. Kyle, if you want to answer, let me digest it for a second.
I like it. I got G thinking.
G. So I think, well, first off, I think draft capital, can be expressed in a few ways. We can look at rounds. We can even look at, some people just separate day 2 to day 3. And what was round 1 and separate everything from that. But there is a bit of flaw in that thinking. And let's take the running backs, for instance. So we've got 4 running backs in the first 3 rounds, right? So 2 on day 1 and 2 on day 2. But the 2 guys on day 2, really, I mean, Javonte Williams, we talked about, he was the second, third pick of the second round. He was practically a first round pick. Like his draft capital really isn't that much different than Etienne and Harris, other than those guys. Those teams have a 5th-year option on those players. Really, that's really the only difference in those contracts and in what those teams invested. But Trey Sermon's a day 2 pick, but he was I think he was a compensation pick at the end of the 3rd round. Like, he's closer to Michael Carter's draft capital than he is to Javonte Williams' draft capital. So I think even more so than rounds, just look at where the actual draft number is. I think he was 88th and Michael Carter in the 120s, whereas Javonte Williams, again, we said 34th, 35th. That's a pretty sizable difference there. So I think just in that, but adjusting expectations with running back draft capital, I think is what you're leading to, Doc, in that, I mean, it was almost, I get like even last year, right? Only 1 running back in the first round. Like the number of running backs going into the first round has diminished. You think about 2017 wasn't that long ago, where Leonard Fournette was the 4th overall pick. No matter how good these running backs are, I mean, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Williams, it seemed like it was very clear that, as you mentioned, Doc, teams had them all, those 3 kind of in their own tier, at least a massive tier above everyone else. But no one felt the need to reach for them in the early first. It took until the Steelers at 24. I mean, the Jags with their 2nd first-round pick taking it. That makes a bit more sense in that regard. But yeah, so it takes a few teams to say that, but none of the teams that are really early are going to seem to make that investment. So maybe a half-round adjustment. And I mean, the boss has a good point. I mean, this could also, maybe not draw too many conclusions from one season if it's just a really bad class, right? I mean, this seemed like it was a really top-heavy class. Not just a running back. I found that for a lot of positions. It seemed like there's a few guys at the very top, really deep first round, but then the middle rounds, you really didn't like it at all. Even early into the second, it started to dry up at kind of all positions, it seemed.
I think basically draft capital matters for every position differently. But if you look at a tight end, I mean, we haven't, this is the first time since Vernon Davis, or who was the last tight end to get drafted top 5? Top 10.
I don't know. Has it ever happened?
Top 10 would be Hawkinson, but 5, he might be right there with Davis, yeah.
But it's hard. But like you really think about it, like Pitt, his draft capital, obviously right now, I don't even know how to say this. Kyle Pitt's value is so damn high, like it's almost like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. It's crazy how high his value is. And I'm be honest, I'm almost like, even if I'm at the 104, I'm probably just going to try to trade out and see if I can get some good value, because someone's going to take Kyle Pitt top 5, in a normal 1 quarterback league. And the other thing that Kyle mentioned is this.
That was me. I was that person.
We're getting to that soon, Doc.
The thing is, this year's draft, if you really look at it, the landing spot got hurt a lot, and we were excited for it. The rookie ranking, we're like, oh, these wide receivers they're landing good spots, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, not a lot of running back landed in good spots, not a lot of wide receivers landed in good spots. It was all over the place. I mean, we saw Michael Carter, draft capital. We're worried about that. We saw Trey Sermon go somewhere. It's just all over the place. But the thing is, to me, is this. Draft draft capital matters, but sometimes the scheme and the situation matter more. I mean, everybody right now is probably ranking Trey Lance number 2, but would I be shocked if he produces better than in fantasy better than Lawrence? No, because he has that rushing upside. So.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I'm alluding to, or what I'm speculating on. And it's not like I'm not married to this idea, but it's just like, it's kind of like the post-draft analysis is like, oh, this guy's draft capital sucks, therefore X, Y, and Z. And I'm just kind of raising the question of maybe there is mitigating circumstances this year for the reasons that I mentioned, and it might not be, the death knell that it was in years past as far as getting the quote-unquote low draft capital. Just something to consider for all the viewers and the people that are kind of going through the process as the draft has worked its way out and going forward. So that, I just kind of wanted to bring that out there. I certainly appreciate your guys' take on it, because it's just something that kind of came to me. I mean, I realize I'm not Darwin coming up with like, the theory of relativity here, but was that Darwin? I don't know. Kyle, you're a teacher.
Darwin Thompson?
Darwin Thompson. Even more elusive.
Darwin Thompson,
that's pretty relatively unknown, to be honest. Theory of but so apparently Kyle Pitts is the first tight end taken in the top 5. At least that's what Jeff said, and we believe everything Jeff says, because he's he's the true fantasy G, the fantasy god for us anyway. So I do mean that, Jeff, but apparently Garrison doesn't. So Dynasty Gambit, it's not the only show I'm going for too involving Dynasty. You also have the Dynasty Pawn Shop, and Eric Romanoff co-host on that. And he's saying, it makes a good point here, teams aren't interested in investing first-round capital in a position with such a short shelf life.
Yep.
Right. Beautiful sentence.
Contract matters a lot too. So it seemed like last year, here's the other thing we have to look at. If you really look at all the running back in recent years that have gone drafted in the first round, always been top 20 to 30. I mean, no team's ready anymore. I think Zeke was the last top 5.
McCaffrey, I think he was like 7 or 8 or something like that.
Fournette was 4th overall that year. So two of those, that was the year with 2 running backs in the top 10, but really hasn't been much since then.
And I honestly believe the reason why the Steelers took Najee 28th, 27th?
22, 23, something like that.
Oh, 22, 23, because they knew they weren't going to draft him in the second round. Or they weren't going to get a chance, so they had to reach.
And I love that. I love that for them. Like, I really like the fact that they did reach a little bit, and they got the fan base excited, but it filled the need for them. And yeah, I know they got offensive line issues, but is there a really big difference there as opposed to kind of locking up that player that you want as opposed to risking it? So I like the fact that they did that. I'm happy for the Steelers. I'm happy for their fan base, and it's good for Najee Harris too.
Darwin Thompson. Oh my God.
Yeah, Eric, coming up with this is a good one. Yeah, Darwin Thompson's theory of relatively unknown.
Eric, I love that. I love that.
We barely know him. Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. That put that on a T-shirt. Maybe we'll send that to Viridian Global, and it'll be part of all the great gear that they have going for 2.com/store if you want to get your own copies of those. Okay. So I think Gerson, you kind of alluded to this with running backs. It almost feels like the landing spots more than draft capital, especially for that big bunch. I'd say starting at Sermon all the way to even some of the guys that were undrafted. What you're really looking for is the opportunity. Whereas the wide receivers, I think the clear delineation is the draft capital. I think I'm looking at it, and I'm not really interested in any of the wide receivers drafted after the 5th round in the NFL draft. Seth Williams was the one guy I think we were excited for before that, but then 6th round to the Broncos late kind of took the shine off that. But really that whole group of 5th, 6th, and 7th round wide receivers and the undrafted guys, I really have very little interest in. I think for the late shots, I'd rather just grab a running back who looks like he's in a good situation. But I'm really going to push heavy is the wide receivers drafted in the 3rd and 4th round, I think. And obviously the 2nd round as well. But I think those guys are going really heavy. But after you get out of after you get really past, I would say even just 4 running backs, mostly want to attack the wide receiver position. And then once that tier dries up, then back to running backs. But that's getting into the specific draft strategy. But some thoughts there. But I feel like comparing running back draft capital to wide receiver draft capital, it's not an exact. It's apples to oranges. It's not an exact science.
Totally agree.
So like Michael Carter, for instance, who did get 4th round capital, but I view as a good opportunity. I know not everyone sees it that way, but I'd rather have Carter than I think every wide receiver drafted in the 3rd round, and probably about half of the ones drafted in the 2nd round. So of the NFL draft I'm talking about. So like that's I think a good example. But there aren't. He's probably about the only running back I'm willing to elevate that high. I mean, Trey Sermon would be the other one. I think those two kind of enter up there. But then after that, it's a big glob of a bunch of different running backs. But then I'm willing to take multiple shots at the end of the 4th round, as we'll see as we get to some drafts. Jeff has I think a specific topic here. So Kyle Pitts going 101 in Dynasty. He says he also has the 106. So, I mean, let's do the math here. What's the worst case scenario if you take Kyle Pitts 101? Now, I don't know if Jeff mentioned single quarterback or super flex. I'm going to assume single quarterback. I don't know.
I feel like it's got to be single quarterback.
Even I've said this before. Even in a start 2 tight end league, I don't think I'm taking Pitts ahead of Lawrence or Lance or Fields. To be honest, I super flex. Got to go with those quarterbacks. So assuming it's single quarterback league, 101 Pitts, you probably have 3 running backs go, and Chase at 5. So you're left with Jalen Waddle at 6 or Javonte Williams. That's your worst case scenarios. I would probably say Waddle without knowing what the specific scoring settings are. Just the RB. Always, I'm the RB guy, of course. It's not horrible, especially considering. Doubt Pitts is there at 106. So if you really want him, I don't mind. I'm starting to come around to Pitts in rookie drafts higher, simply because his trade and startup value is ridiculous. That's where I think I'm just totally sold off. Like the fact that I can't even take him as a top 5 tight end in Dynasty, and maybe that's a hot take, but like he's some people have him as the tight end 1 already. I think that's equally as ridiculous as my take on outside the top 5.
I think it is.
So great trade value right now to just draft and trade that's probably my strategy at this point. If I have him, I want to trade him before the season starts. I'll hold until August kind of thing. But I think once he starts to not produce like we expect, that might dip a little bit. This is the hype right now is so high that I get, because right now there's probably no player worth like that at that value at 101 that's going to just massively increase for trade value and can get you a haul. So I like it, Jeff. So what do you guys think?
Here's something else that could change things, because Julio Jones might get traded after June 1. And could Kyle Pitts' stock go even higher in a couple of months if Julio Jones isn't there? I think it might, which is kind of ridiculous, because I've seen some trades where, there was something somebody put out on Twitter where it was like they offered CMC for Pitts straight up and it got rejected. I mean,
I was shocked.
About sky high value. I mean, geez.
But but at that point, can it even go up? I mean, that basically makes him, because I mean, if it's a single quarterback league, is CMC not still the 101 as a dynasty startup?
I would think so.
Well, apparently not in that league. Now it's Pitts, right? So my thing is, where can he go from here? He's already almost in some circles, maybe as people legit think of him as the 101. I don't think that seems like that's the rare exception. Not everyone has that high, but it's tough to. Where can he go?
I think that's far-fetched that he's the 101. People are overreacting. Like, here's my thing.
Yeah.
If I came up to you and said, I'll trade you, what's his name, George Kittle for Kyle Pitt, how would you feel about that?
I'm seeing that get rejected a ton, but I'd love that. I would gladly give up Pitts to get Kittle. I'd even add to that, to be honest. Like, I'll give a second round pick.
Exactly. But the thing is, everybody's so enamored with the rookie fever, 104 pick, 103, you can get Kyle Pitt. Okay, that's great. But here's the thing. We've seen history shown that tight ends don't produce right away. Yep. And we can all agree on TJ Hawkinson's going to break out this year big. I think so, at least. Sorry, I didn't mean.
I think so too. I've got him as he's in my top 5, and that's part of why. So,
so he had a top 7 pick draft capital. So, 3 picks? I mean, I know they're different players, but here's the way I put it: I'm going to sell Kyle Pitt if someone wants to give me, let's say, a top 5 running back or top CD Lamb, and then throw in like a second rounder or something. I don't care. Like if I can get these elite top dynasty players and then a little more, then I'm willing to sell, because the tight end landscape, we know this every year, it rotates. Last year we had, you know who the number 3 tight end was? It was Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody thought. I mean, I did, because I was all over Logan Thomas in the preseason. I said, this year's Darren Waller is Logan Thomas. People laughed at me. Jeff can vouch for this. People laughed at me, said, "Oh, you're drunk. Put your beer down." They said a bunch of crap, and I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to give you a little sleeper, man. And then, well, he carried himself on the, he did great.
Darren Waller was one of the only 2 tight ends that finished ahead of him last year.
And I called Darren Waller out 2 years ago. I don't know who this year is. I'm still got to do my research, but the end all be all with Kyle Pitts, if you can sell him for a Bitcoin, do it. That's how high the price.
I love the cryptocurrency analogy. It's really very fitting. And as somebody who drafted Kyle Pitts over, is really struggling with Pitts versus Jamar Chase, and I took Pitts, and the other thing that I want to put out there, and I realize I might be in the minority, is sometimes you just got to plant your flag and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take my chance on this and bank that everybody else is off, and be okay with whatever outcome is. And honestly, if Kyle Pitts busts or he doesn't have a good first year, I'm okay with that, because I'm still, that's my conviction and I'm standing behind it. So that's the other part of it.
And with this hype, you got to think that even if he fails, the Pitts truthers are going to maintain his value. I don't think we're going to see a massive drop, because I think the expectation is that rookie tight ends are never that great, right? So maybe that's also built in to the, I don't want to say excuse, but the maintain of value, even if the production
he's going to have a long leash. So it's going to maintain the value. It's going to continue to maintain its value over time, I think, unless he gets hurt, which is always a possibility.
Of course, yeah. Multiple injuries, that definitely sours and it takes away from the potential. But also, so I think if you do decide I'm going to keep Pitts through this year, I want him on my team. I'm not. I think we're all of the opinion, trade him now, because this is the potential to be his highest value ever. There is a chance that he never.
I'm not of that opinion, just for the record. You guys are, but I'm not.
Okay, Gerson and I are. I think, I don't know that that's the likeliest scenario, but it's within the realm of possibilities. Well, again, he's going so high. I'm starting to envision it's tough to be any higher.
Obviously,
again, these are some exceptions I think we're seeing, but.
I mean, obviously, I want a great deal. I'm not just going to give him for
Yeah.
For
sure.
I want
elite
value return.
Yeah, go up and get elite assets. Like you were saying, you could go up and get a CeeDee Lamb or a Justin Jefferson, whoever. You could probably get the wide receiver one and have stuff added to that side, and giving up Pitts the way the value is right now. Go and get an elite running back. I mean, can you get Pitts? Can you get Jonathan Taylor for Pitts in most leagues?
I have a guy giving me Kamara for the 104, and I'm like, I'm down.
Yeah.
I can get Kamara for the 104. I'll do it, because he loves Pitts. I'm like,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, it makes sense. So anyway, so I think the big takeaway, the rookie draft price, I'm starting to buy into, just because the value is so high that the play is draft him and flip him. But if you do hold him, definitely don't sell low in season. Once he has a couple bad games, it's okay. Don't panic on that, because that would be the worst. If you sell the farm to get him and then you just sell him for pennies, after 3 weeks, because if you're going to buy in knowing that it's an investment for this year, but a long-term investment. I think that, and again, that's what you're doing, Doc. It seems like in this rookie draft that we're going to get to in terms of some rookie draft results. So you've had one.
You guys' group therapy in week 3 or 4 when he tanks. You guys might have to talk me off the ledge a little bit, and I'm okay with that. So that's where we might be at.
So anyway, so you were sitting at 103. Now, did you was that your plan all along? Was Pitts no matter what? If you had the 101, you would have just drafted Pitts?
No, I really, really struggled with Pitts versus Jamar Chase. That's who I really was looking at. And I kind of figured that the two big running backs were going to go 1-2. I didn't know which order. And then actually ETN actually ended up going 101, which I know you like. And then it was Najee Harris. So no surprise. And I was kind of left with Jamar Chase versus Pitts. And I really struggled with it. I even contemplated with trading down and just kind of getting some more value and taking whoever was left. And then I just really kind of thought about it. And I was like, when I saw that I had the 103, I was thinking Pitts. I got on the Jamar Chase train, convinced myself to take Jamar Chase, and then came back to Pitts. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go get my guy. And he's either going to work out for me, or maybe I can make a big trade at some point. And that's how it ended up going. And I really didn't think too much about it after that. Didn't really consider. I got some kind of Garbaggio trade offers. I think one was like, it was like Henry Ruggs and some other stiff for the 103. Like, oh, it's James Robinson. Henry Ruggs and James Robinson for the 103. And I was like, if I could actually have turned myself into poisonous mist and traveled through the computer and killed this dude, I would have. And, so I rejected that with extreme prejudice. And then I was just like, I'm just going to take Pitts.
Okay, so don't, doctor, a man of healing and medicine, but don't send him bad trade offers.
There's one thing that raises my temperature is if you send me a bad trade offer, it's like you like really bad. I was like, it's like, hey, let's send this lowball offer and we'll work from there. It's like negotiations are concluded at that point, and you are persona non grata. So you got to be careful about that. At least as far as I'm concerned, I take it personally. I hold trade grudges.
Low ball, fine, but like also within realm of possibility. Like, right. There's
we got to be in the neighborhood,
So yeah, but anyway, so trade etiquette aside, just to talk about the specifics of this league, because this is actually an interesting league setup. So one quarterback, starting lineups are one quarterback, one running back, 3 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 2 flex,
right, and
kicker and defense. Full point PPR, but also it looks like a 0.1 point per carry.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so I totally, and I mean, with the 3 wide receiver, but everything else at 1, this seems like it's a league that's purposely designed to kind of be super balanced. So I can see why you were debating between Pitts and Chase there, just with the it almost seems like wide receiver might be the scarce position. But again, with the point per carry, I can also understand why Etienne Harris went first. Like this, it seems like in this league, you were happy really being in the top 5, I would think. And I also noticed there's like some bumped up QB scoring. So that'll be interesting because so quickly went through that. Etienne 1, Harris 2, Pitts 3. Like you said, you chose between Pitts and Chase. Right. Jamar Chase went with the next pick.
No surprise. Chase went with the next pick. I think that guy
Javonte Williams.
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, and then Javonte Williams 105. I think that makes sense for me again with the bit of point per carry there. And so I guess just first off in that, Travis Etienne going first overall. So Gerson, let's hear from you on that, because I know you've also got we also have your rankings here from you have on Fantasy Pros, and you have Etienne as your number one rookie in single quarterback. So tell us why.
Okay, so last year I got criticized for putting Jonathan Taylor number 1 over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I said that he's in his own tier. I don't care what people say. I understand this. The landing spot was great. Yeah, okay, I get it. But I look at talent. I evaluate talent. I evaluate the ability to perform in what scheme he's in, and that offensive line. Jonathan Taylor, zone run, deep offense, and she just killed it. I mean, he turned it on in the second half of the season. I mean, he was struggling, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's the next." They made bad comparisons. I can't even remember. It was like the next. Oh man, the Raiders running back Trent Richardson. The next Trent Richardson. I'm like, dude.
Who did play for the Colts at one point, to be fair, but yeah, definitely not the same running back.
But that was his speed. He would have been in last year's draft class with the Dobbins, the Swift, the Taylor, the Akers, but he didn't declare early. And I didn't like that, because he should have declared early, and he probably still would have gotten draft capital. But I think he was more worried that, he had competition, maybe a better money or something. But he went back, and I think it hurt him a little bit.
I don't know. It did. It paid off. He got the first round capital, right? He got, and I mean, last year the Chiefs took the first running back at 32. So him going 25 means it's a better paycheck in year 1 than what Clyde Edwards-Helaire got. So I actually think it paid off for him, right? I mean, I think he led the tea leaves and knew that this was going to be a bad running back class, and that he was going to get pushed up a little higher because of that. Last year was so deep. It was one of the, right? I mean, last year was one of the best running back classes we've seen. At least, that 2017 are probably the 2 best in the last decade.
I mean, the thing was with Travis Etienne, I thought when he went back to school, it was mainly, you know, he wanted to win that national title. I believe that strongly. He went back to work on his catching upside, I guess you can say, and he proved it. He did great. You know, he had really good. He had really good hand, and he's only played 12 games though last year. So that's what I don't know if that like really looked bad on him, but he had the breakout age at 18.6. He was high on NFL grades at 6.71. I mean, his relative athletic score was a 9.13, which is elite. I love Travis Etienne, everything about him. I do believe that he doesn't weigh 250 pounds, 15 pounds, like Doc said in one of the shows we did. He must have ate or drank water or something, and we argued about this. And I was like, yeah, maybe he doesn't weigh 215. But let's say he weighs 205. Okay, we'll give him that, you know. But he's 5'10". I mean, he went to Mr. James Robinson's backfield, right? Okay, I get it. But at Ohio State, Urban Meyer always ran a 60-40 split. I mean, we've seen bell cow running back come out of Ohio State. But I just think ETN having chemistry with Lawrence already, and that team offense, like with Shark, LaVisca, and all this, it's going to help open him up. And I'm really excited for him. There's a lot of things that I don't like about Najee, but there's not a lot. There's things I kind of put question marks on, and that's what mainly, you know, jumped the ship for him to be number one.
Yeah, that's really fair. I think the chemistry thing is being underplayed. Mm-hmm. One thing that I wanted to bring to you guys as we're talking about landing spots. Now, granted, I have a bias because I'm an injury analyst. So the thing is there's this idea of, I've heard a couple of things, and I want to get your guys' take on this too. Number one, like, this guy has no path to playing time because of landing spot. And the other thing I've heard is, and again, this to me is ridiculous, but I want to hear what you guys think. It's like, well, I don't like to really evaluate players or evaluate situations based on the possibility of injury. And I've heard everything from because you can't predict injury to I don't want to put negativity out into the universe. And again, I recognize that I have a bias as an injury analysis, but I got to be honest with you. That's one of the most ridiculous positions that you could take when evaluating NFL players, because the nature of the NFL itself is equivalent to, and this is not hyperbole, getting into multiple car accidents, low-speed car accidents over the course of a 3-hour period every week for about 4 months. So the idea of saying that, like, injuries aren't really a factor when it comes to something like that is pretty ridiculous. Somebody is going to get hurt, probably multiple people every week, and that's going to alter the landscape. So this idea of there's no path to playing time, everybody has a path to playing time because of injuries. I mean, Kyle on the Monday Night War Room, we spend half the show every week of me prattling on about how many people got hurt that week and how it changes things. And that's on a week-to-week basis. Like, this is why I do what I do. Like, this is why I have a job. Like, we may not be able to predict a lot of these injuries or predict when they're going to happen, but they will happen. And being able to capitalize when they do is something that I think is being overlooked. And I want to get your guys' take on that.
Oh, I think that mattered a lot. I mean, you give me a running back that had a torn ACL, I'm going to worry about that. You know, I'm going to look into it. I'm going to make sure his knee's good. I believe Trey Sermon had an injury, and I think that was really worrisome. Yeah.
Shoulder, right?
Yeah, he had a AC joint, I think. Yeah. And he and the last game that they were playing, he couldn't finish the game because he separated his AC joint.
I mean, I tell people this about injuries. With knees, they are going to be the highest, most important thing of a running back and wide receivers. Offensive players, I mean, quarterback, not so much, because if the pocket quarterback, he'll be all right, you know.
Yeah, you can work around that. Russell Wilson might be a bit of a different story, but yeah, you're absolutely right. It's one of those things. It's really lower body injuries and running backs, especially. They're really problematic. And even if it doesn't cost you the year, the thing that I think has value too is think about guys that get hurt. You know, they're going to miss 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks over the course of the season. And if you have that guy, but you don't have the necessary depth to kind of get through not just the bye week, but the couple of games that he's going to get quote unquote nicked up and miss the game, that can really hurt you. That can be the difference between making the playoffs or not.
A running back from South Carolina, Lattimore. You guys remember him? I think it was.
Okay.
He was highly touted to be like a top 10 pick or a top first round pick, and then he tore his ACL, and then he basically lost all his value. I mean, we got to think about it. It's almost like a scholarship. When you get a scholarship in high school, what do you got to do? Stay healthy, right?
Right.
As soon as you get hurt, that's going to go into your draft capital. That's going to go into your scouting and everything. But, oh, man, to say that injuries don't matter, come on.
Yeah, I mean that's what I've been hearing by some people, and no offense to them, but I mean that's a ridiculous take. I mean, you got to account for injuries. You got to account that everybody's roster looks great now because they're not doing anything. Once they start practicing and mini camps and the preseason starts, these guys are going to get hurt. And what are you going to do then? I mean, just think about your own teams that you've had where it's like you've got a juggernaut on paper, and unfortunately 2 or 3 of your starters just happen to get nicked up, quote unquote, nicked up at the same time, and they miss 2 or 3 weeks. That can decimate your squad, and you could lose those games. That could cost you the playoffs. I mean, you see it all the time. I mean, it's like
I saw teams last year had Christian McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, and they're like, I'm going to win the championship. Next thing you know, guess what? They're probably a lottery team now.
Right. And these guys that come out of nowhere, like look at Mike Davis. Like, yeah, could you have predicted Mike Davis was going to be a thing? No. But when Christian McCaffrey went down, it's like, yeah, Mike Davis, he hasn't been relevant for a couple of years. Well, he's a running back in the NFL, so he's got a certain level of talent, and now he's got big-time opportunity, and he ended up finishing it as an RB1 and saved a lot of people's bacon that ended up picking him up. So it happens every year. Like, you got to account for it. And some swings that you could take towards the end of the draft on guys that maybe we don't like, or I saw Jeff put like that the draft class is garbage. The running back draft class is garbage. That's true, because we all want to hit home runs with these late picks. But if you can pick up a guy that's going to get a few games started where he can be in your starting lineup, 2, 3, 4 games, like Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard nobody really likes, but McCaffrey got hurt last year. He could be Mike Davis 2.0, and he can get you 3 or 4 weeks of a starting running back production for a late rookie pick. That's worth taking a shot on. I mean, that's not a home run, but that's a double. And, if you want to use a baseball analogy, and doubles can score runs too, and that can get you over the hump. Bye weeks, replacements, it's important. That's my take. I have a bias because I'm an injury analyst, but that's my take.
So I think, the key there is never say never, right? Like the idea that he doesn't have a path at all. I mean, if he's on an NFL team, he's got to at least, if they're not on NFL rosters, there's zero path. But as soon as you're on an NFL team, you do technically have a path to start. It's, likelihood. Some guys might only have a 1% chance to start. That could be the case, but, understand it as that. It's not a very, no one's a zero, right? I mean, there's so many guys that get 0 fantasy points on a week-to-week basis, but no one's if they're on a team, there's a chance. So just with that, but I also think part of me that thinks that the people that understate it, I understand it, because I also think one thing that's overstated perhaps is situation, especially if we're talking dynasty. I mean, this is Dynasty Gambit, so that is that understanding. Situations change so much, so I think that the player evaluation is super important. I mean, again, and I think everyone keeps talking about this, the A.J. Brown, right? Everyone thought A.J. Brown went to a horrible landing spot and he fell in drafts, when really he probably should have been the 103 in that draft from a single quarterback perspective, 104, Jacobs, Montgomery, Sanders, those elite running backs, and probably Brown should have been the next pick, or DK Metcalf. So, but yet he was going in the, instead of being the 105, he was a lot of times the 205. So the other thing too, the talent evaluation shouldn't fully deteriorate just because the draft capital isn't there. And again, I think with these late players, there, no one got the greatest landing spots or the best draft capital. So any different signals you can use to differentiate them is good. But so I don't know if that really answered it, but I think, that's what I think.
It did. One other thing I want to throw in there real quick, even though we're talking about dynasty and we're thinking like years ahead of time, potentially, 2 years, 3 years down the road. The thing is that once the season starts, and this is something that I think is underplayed in the dynasty realm, and this is for redraft as well. The way that I kind of approach it is because of injuries, you really have to focus on having healthy bodies in a very short time frame, like this week and next week. And that's pretty much it. And you have to do what you need to do and make that happen if you're going to be successful in any given year. Doesn't matter how good your team is, because guys could get hurt. So it's certainly something where you have guys that you're developing and assets that you're developing, but the focus always, to me, has to be the here and now, the short term. Do I have healthy bodies this week because of injuries and buys? And what's my situation look like next week if this guy were to get hurt, if that guy were to get hurt, if this guy gets suspended, if this guy gets traded even? What's my situation? And we lose focus in the dynasty realm sometimes because of that. But that's what I kind of want to bring it back to, is like at its core, fantasy football is about the here and now. And yeah, it's great to be thinking about things 2, 3, 4 years down the road and keep that in the periphery. But the main focus to me should always be this week and next week. And don't think any further than that, because a lot of times what the landscape looks like in 1 week might be very different 2 or 3 weeks down the road. And you got to be able to adjust and have that depth to be flexible.
Yeah, I'm thinking, the teams that are in rebuild mode, or tank mode, however you want to say it, they can pick advantage of that because they don't care if they got players. They're taking players that are injured or on bye. Like that's when you can kind of take advantage of those price cycles, right? The rookie picks will be less at probably their least valuable in season, because that's when everyone wants the points. But as soon as week 16 or now week 17 is over, those rookie picks start to creep up in value. So
and the situation flips.
So keeping on with rookie picks, and so Doc, I want to keep talking about your draft here, because an interesting thing. So we talked about, I think the top 5 picks kind of seem pretty obvious. I know the top 5 match Gerson's top 5 ranking, maybe not in the exact order, but it's those same 5 players. So it's kind of almost viewed as a tier. Now, how high do quarterbacks go in single quarterback leagues? Well, in this instance, Trevor Lawrence actually went 106. Now, when this happened live, were you expecting this? Is this something that in this league is kind of the quarterbacks kind of go up in price a little bit, or was this a shock to you?
Well, the thing is, I was surprised by that, and I went back and looked at it, and that team had a really big need at quarterback. So I guess where he was just like, I'm going to jump this. And he had 2 picks. He had the 102 and he had the 106 in the first round. I think the way that he approached it was, I'm going to be able to get a quarterback later. I'm going to have Najee Harris or one of the running backs in the fold, and I really need a quarterback, so I'm just going to take him here. And he's pretty stacked at wide receiver. So I think that maybe those guys like Waddle and Devonta Smith didn't really appeal to him at that point, or Rashad Bateman. So that's what I think happened there. So that's a little bit of an outlier. It's a little early, but that's what I think happened there.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I guess traded up, probably thinking, looks like his original spot was the 106 and he traded up to the 102, probably thinking he probably knew he had to go quarterback, but he didn't want to make his only rookie pick in the first round of quarterback.
Right.
So,
and he gave up Nuck Hopkins to get that 102, by the way.
Nuke Hopkins, if you're saying his wide receiver core is deep, and how was his running back room? Did he really need Najee?
It's not great.
I'd make that trade then. I think I get the rookie running back on a rookie contract with a 5th-year option, so it's a bit more stability on Harris, even though he's a bit of an older back. With the point per carry, I like that trade actually.
Yeah, I don't. With quarterbacks, I think this year it's gonna be so hyped up. I mean, Lance.
Yeah, baby. I traded to get Lance in the 2nd round.
Yeah, I noticed that later. That was good.
I mean, I just think I value in a 1 quarterback league. I don't value quarterback very much.
No, I get it. I
don't value quarterback at all. I don't value quarterback or tight end position in the 1 quarterback league because it's been shown that you need to be strong at running back and wide receiver in a 1 quarterback league to win. But the thing is, in a 1 quarterback league, I usually try to just hit on the later quarterback. Last year, 1 quarterback I was high on was Justin Herbert, and I got him in free agency. We did a fab bid after. I went like $250 on him. I won. There was a year where I liked Dak Prescott. I hit on him. Dude, Justin Field probably this year. I mean, I'm not a Zach Wilson guy. I've said it many times.
Oh yeah.
I don't believe him. But this year it's different because these quarterbacks are like they were scouted as the league. They've been great. They've got draft capitals and everything. But I think Lance ceiling is so high that I wonder if people are going to reach up for Lawrence and Lance. But in a one quarterback league, I'm not drafting them in the first round. I'll just wait. I know I've seen people, a.k.a. Jeff, said that he's going to draft Trevor Lawrence 8th overall. And I was like, whoo, I'd rather draft a wide receiver, a running back. Well, maybe not a running back because then running back.
Yeah, it gets a little thin after Javonte. I want to address Lance specifically because when I traded into that spot, I moved in there after I think who went at the 203. I feel like it was Kadarius Toney. Tony Kadarius Toney went right before that. So when I got I had the 203 and the 205, and when I traded into the 205, I was looking at Fields or Lance, and I didn't care which one. I knew one of them was going to be there, and that's why I traded in there. And my idea is that, especially with taking a tight end and a quarterback, is like if these things work out, I don't ever want to have to address this position again for a long time. And there's one other thing about Trey Lance that, just appeals to me that hasn't really been hasn't really been talked about that much. And the thing is, I saw an interview with him, and he talked about how his whole life, everybody's been telling him that he can't do it. Like he can't be a quarterback. He wasn't heavily recruited coming out of college. They wanted to move him to defensive back. They wanted to move him to linebacker. They wanted him to play wide receiver. And he stuck by his guns, and he said, screw you. I'm going to be a quarterback. I'm going to go, to, North Dakota State. And he excelled there. And the thing is that he's got a chip on his shoulder. And as a guy, that appeals to me as a guy from Hudson County, New Jersey. Maybe I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder too. I've had plenty of people in my life tell me that I can't do something. I can't be a doctor. My scores aren't good enough. My grades aren't good enough. My medical school wasn't good enough. My extracurriculars weren't good enough. And guess what? Screw those guys. So there's something about Trey Lance. I talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago or 2 shows ago about if something about a guy appeals to you, and Herbert was one of those guys for me last year too. Just go get him. And I want Trey Lance on my team, and I hope he does really well. And if he doesn't, I'm okay with that. But I like the fact that he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he kind of wants to stick it to the NFL. And that tells me that when he faces adversity in the NFL, it's not going to faze him. He's gonna be able to weather that storm, and I think he's going to need to. But he's already got people telling him that he can't do it. So, I love your take saying that you don't think he's ready for the NFL. I hope he sticks it to you.
Hey, I like Lance now that his body landed because he has a coach that's going to coach him very well. One of the things that I always, every draft, the next day, I go to NFL.com and just listen to what the coaches say, see how they're going to use this guy and everything. And one of the biggest takeaway I got from Lance and many other people on Twitter said it. And when I say Twitter, I don't mean like random people. I mean like people that actually matter in the NFL industry, okay? Sorry, Twitter. But they said he was the smartest quarterback in this whole draft. I don't know about you guys, but I thought Trevor Lawrence was pretty freaking smart, So
I think he's smart. That's interesting because that's saying something. Because these guys they're smart guys. That's the feeling going around.
Shanahan coach Matt Ryan, which I think one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league. Doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Very accurate. And so I'm like, wow. Shanahan likes this, and the situation he landed in was great. I think he's very raw. He's going to need to work on a lot of things. But that rushing upside is insane. I mean, the guy had 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in 2019, and 169 carry for 1,100 yards on 6.5 yards per carry and 14 touchdowns. I mean, translate that to the NFL. I mean, even if you get, let's say, 21 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, I don't know. You're going to throw an interception, But
sure.
Let's say 800 yards rushing on that 49ers offense. Oh my gosh, dude!
I could work with that. You know, it's that's something I want to have a part of, and you know, if I end up trading him at some point, that's cool. But we'll see. So Kyle, I know we're getting towards the witching hour here. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to bring up, or if you wanted to get into like kind of late round guys that maybe are getting overlooked, slipping into the third, fourth round, undrafted, potentially guys you could pick up in the fifth round, undrafted free agent types that you like, and you as well. I don't know how you guys feel about that. You want to get into that?
Well, I actually wanted to keep focusing on your draft a little bit, just because there's an interesting kind of facet here in terms of where this draft went, and Gerson, your ranking tiers. There's kind of a mix. So there's after that top five, it seems like you've got quite a tier of receivers with Sermon and Carter mixed in, and then it's the quarterbacks. And I think that's where the discussion is. You've got Lawrence at 15, Lance 16, Fields 17. I think I'm more on, I don't know, especially in this league where you only have to start one running back. I don't think I'd want to take Michael Carter or Trey Sermon ahead of really any of those three. It's going to depend. I mean, leagues where you have to start 2 or even 3 running backs, sure, that position scarcity gets pumped up, but only start one running back. I'm hesitant to take both Sermon and Carter. I think they're going. I mean, your rankings are kind of set more probably in the mindset of start 2 running back kind of traditional league roster settings. So in that regard, Doc, I think getting Lance at 205 is really great value. And I mean, even Fields. So where did Fields fall to? 208.
A little bit, later in the second round.
Yeah, I mean, 208 is pretty. That's still really good value for me.
Yeah, I really like that. I thought he was going to go like basically higher than he did, and I would have been very happy. So if Lance would have went 204, I would have been very happy taking Fields at 205.
Yeah. Okay, and actually,
I was happy with either one.
Because I have all 3 of those quarterbacks in the same tier: Lawrence, Lance, and Fields. Did you guys both feel the same way about that?
Yeah. I did.
Yeah, so we probably all have Lawrence ranked 1, but I mean, for us, the difference between 1 and 3 is very minimal.
Yeah, they all have their pros and cons, but I think we like them all.
Yeah, and I'm pretty high on Wilson, but I do have him at a tier separate. But as we'll see, especially as we get to Superflex drafts talking about. But I did want to focus on that tier, Gerson, especially of wide receivers. So you've got your rankings. You've got Devontae Smith, Rondale Moore, Rashad Bateman, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall, Sermon Carter, and then Elijah Moore, Amari Rodgers. One of the things I want to talk about, the difference between Elijah Moore and Rondale Moore, because I think I've got those guys back to back in my rankings, but you've got them separate by 6 spots, and I think maybe it's a bit of you're a little higher on Moore than I am, a little higher on Rondale than I am, a little lower on Elijah than I am, but I guess you could talk about both of those players actually and explain maybe why you're so high on Rondale, why you're so low on Elijah.
I mean, I get the whole Elijah Moore love, but I'm guessing apparently people don't realize this, but he's 5'8", 184. And Rondale Moore is 5'7", 180. Like, have you heard anybody say, oh, Elijah Moore is so small, I don't know, I'm worried about his height. Like, nobody said that about him. But I'm like,
That's
dude,
true.
like what? 1 inch is going to make a gigantic difference? Okay, all right. Now, next thing I look at is situation. Queenberry, Sala. I'm like, I'm going to have to say, is it Queenberry? Queenberry? What is his name?
Kingsbury, I think so. I can't remember. He might not matter after next year, though, so.
Yeah, so I'm like,
his name.
They tank this year, yeah, you're right.
And then
if they don't make the playoffs, then he's, I don't know, hot
I
seat there
kept
for sure.
and I'm like, quarterback situation. Okay, Kyler Murray off the bat. I'm not gonna. I don't like Wilson. And then I'm like, competition. Okay, Larry Fitzgerald gone. AJ Green, he's old. He's not gonna like. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I have no interest in AJ Green at all.
Yep, me either.
And the other thing I was looking at,
Minimal interest.
I'd rather have Christian Kirk if that's the next guy you're saying.
so now we have the draft capital, right? I mean, he was drafted for whatever
44th?
40, yeah, 234, Elijah Moore, and then what's his name? I got it right here. Sorry, I'm trying to find. Rondale Moore was 249. Okay,
49.
but then I looked at the Cardinals. They didn't have a draft pick in the 3rd round, I believe, and they drafted a wide receiver so high. I'm like, okay, if this was a guy he keeps drafting wide receivers after wide receiver, Kirk, Isabella, none of them panned out. Kirk was okay. I like Kirk though, but the thing is, he went up and reached, in my opinion, for Rondell Moore, because I didn't think Rondell Moore was going to go to that high. I thought he would have that little worrisome that he was too small. But then I'm like, okay, let's look at the competition for the Jets. People think Corey Davis, is he not good? I mean, he did pretty good last year. Denzel Mims, yes, I do think what's his name going to get cut. What's that wide receiver? Crowder. Yeah. I think he's going to get cut, but he's still there. So what? He's wide receiver 4 right now and playing with the rookie quarterback. I mean, the offensive line, they did load up. They got Mekhi Becton last year and Barrett Tucker this year, which I love. But I don't like Wilson. His frame worries me. He's fast. I mean, he has good speed, but, like, his arm, yeah, looked good. Sorry, dude. You played for BYU. You played high school competition. I want to see how you do in the NFL before I really claim you to be the savior of the New York Jets, you know?
But to be fair, I mean, his competition was better than Trey Lance's, though, because Trey Lance, at least he's playing in the FBS, Trey Lance in the FCS. So
yeah, I agree with that.
I actually like the situation in the Jets better in terms of the depth chart, just because the Jets don't have a DeAndre Hopkins that's going to, command 150 targets. So Elijah can, especially if Crowder's cut, I think that's the key there, because I think the slot for both Elijah and Rondale is where they're going to thrive. And you're right, Garrison. I do view them as similar players, and that's why, again, I have them back to back in my rankings. I definitely have Waddle. I have Waddle as my wide receiver too. You have Devontae Smith. So I'm curious to that argument actually on why Smith at 2.
I think it's just targets. I like Waddle, but he has Parker and what's his name, Fuller, and I don't even know what tight end can appear on whatever day.
It goes to Preston Williams.
Yeah, Preston Williams. The hype is still, I think, it's dead. But in Tua, I mean, yeah. But to me, is Devontae Smith and then Jalen Reagor and then who else? We're gonna go back to what's his name, Mr. What did they? Not
Fulgham.
Well, I mean, Dallas Goedert there, right? I mean, Goddard and Ertz are still there. I mean, is that offense still run through the tight ends?
Technically, is still there, I believe.
Ertz gonna be gone.
I think he's gonna be gone too. But technically, like you said, he's still there.
He looked gone last year. So I can see Goddard being the alpha there.
It's just crazy.
And I think it's going to cost him his job. But, I mean, don't forget, like, he had a really bad injury and he was trying to gut it out. I still am not out on Ertz. Wherever he ends up, I think he could definitely bounce back next year. But I think they're going to get rid of him, and it's going to be Goddard at the tight end position for them. But like you said, he's still there. He's still competition technically right now.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I didn't really love any of these landing spot situations. Like, I really don't think any of these wide receivers in this tier went to a absolutely great spot. You might argue Jamar Chase with the Bengals is the best spot, just because that's a team that we know is good, right? So I think the idea here is this is one massive tier, right? And like, do you have that as one tier, Gerson, going from Devontae all the way down to Terrace Marshall? Like that, those 5 receivers is that all one tier for you?
I would put from Devontae, Rondell, Bateman, and Jalen Waddle as a tier, and then I drop it down. Okay. There's things that worry me about Terrace Marshall. So, I mean, people kind of targets are not going to be all the way there. I mean, there's still Robbie Anderson, there's still DJ Moore. They drafted Tommy Tremble. Christian McCaffrey will come back. He's going to demand like 80 targets.
The actual alpha.
Yeah. Terrace Marshall's kind of a growth asset, right? Like he's somebody that you're not looking to splash year one unless somebody gets hurt, right? And
he's super young, right? I mean, isn't he going to be 21 during the NFL season?
I believe so. Yeah, he's one of the young, like him and Pitt were really young. So like, I think this is more of a dynasty like second rounder. I mean, I wouldn't in a 12-team league. I'm not drafting Terrace Marshall in the first round. I'm probably just going to take a gamble at Trey Sermon, Michael Carter, because running back is scarcity is so bad. But if I can trade down and then get draft capital, and if someone wants Terrace Marshall, go ahead. But I just think that tier is a big drop off for me.
Well, it's funny because that tier is what happened. So in Doc's draft after Lawrence at 106, it was Devontae Smith 107, Jalen Waddle 108, Elijah Moore 109, Rashad Bateman 110, and Rondale Moore 111, and then Michael Carter 112. Whoever drafted or followed your advice, Gerson, Terrace Marshall 201. So it wasn't a first round pick, it was a second, and then Sermon at 202. So mixed in right there. I know you've got Carter, Marshall, and Sermon. Not in that order. That's the order they were drafted here, but that you've those three back to back in your rankings, right? So it seems like that's kind of that mix there is right on the cusp of the first round. It seems that's where people are going with Marshall. And looking at 203, Doc went Kenneth Gainwell. So do you have him as your RB5, Doc?
Well, the basis for that was, number one, I wasn't sure he was going to be there, but that really is my thesis statement of like putting my money where my mouth is, as far as somebody that I really like going into pre-draft and came out, didn't really get the draft capital, but I had the thought, what if it doesn't matter as much? I really liked what he did the year before he opted out. I like his story. I wonder about recency bias. And the thing is, like, yeah, there's the idea of like, hey, he might just be a flex or a PPR back, but I'm okay with that. I kind of love those guys, you know, like the James Whites, the JD McKissicks, the guys that always get undervalued, but they have the potential to catch a lot of passes and sneaky get into like that RB2 territory for not a lot of investment. And that pick was really tough because I really wanted Trey Lance or Justin Fields. And then when I was able to get the 205, I was like, I can get Gainwell and I can get one of those quarterbacks. And now I feel comfortable making the pick. If I couldn't trade up to, you know, get in the 204, 205, 206 area where I knew I was going to get one of those quarterbacks, it would have been a lot harder of a decision. But I felt like, yeah, it's definitely a bit of a reach, and I'm willing to stand in that fire because I'm relying on what I thought of him going into the draft and put less attention to both his landing spot and his and the draft capital that got invested. I do see a path for him to have a decent role this year, even if Miles Sanders is okay. What if he wrestles the third down back, spot away from Boston Scott?
Well, I think
that works for me. That works for me.
Yeah. Who did they just brought in someone else? I think that player is more of a threat.
They brought Kerryon Johnson.
Kerryon, right? Yeah. Okay. So not that much. Johnson. Actually, yeah, that's not that much more of a threat, but yeah, probably more.
He's another guy on the roster. It didn't cost him anything to pick him up. You know, guys get hurt. I certainly see the value in them doing that. I don't know how much that really scares me. He's a veteran, sure. We'll see. Like it's a shot. You know, it's definitely a shot.
So I want to cover something on this because that draft capital worries me, and so I went and did some research. And this falls also under the Michael Carter thing. He was a fourth rounder, Michael Carter, and Kenny Gainwell sadly was a fifth rounder.
Right.
Here are fourth rounders that got drafted in the fourth round. They're running back. Michael Bush, Roy Helu Jr., Kendall Hunter, DeLon Carter, Kenneth Dixon, Devontae Booker, Ryan Torain, Jakeed Rogers, Jonathan Franklin. Okay. Now let's go look at the running backs that did good, that got those draft capital. Okay. Chris Carson, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams maybe did okay, but those are some, some running backs, but did not all hit, obviously.
Sure.
Draft capital matter a lot to me when it comes to running back.
I get it. I get it. My only thing to that is the landscape changing? Are we, and that's what I'm kind of questioning. Like, are we getting, I'm trying to get people in on the ground floor of the draft capital maybe mattering less. And because of COVID, because of the changing status of the NFL, the devaluing of the running back position, and the emphasis on passing the ball, I could be completely off. I could be completely wrong. But I think there's enough mitigating circumstances for me to question it and to say that maybe it doesn't matter as much as we might think. And that's kind of what I'm going with. And I'm going to test it out. And the thing is, I want you guys to know that, like, when I come up with these ideas, like, I'm willing to get some skin in the game. And I'm willing to kind of go with my own convictions and stand in the fire and not just come from a place of like, hey, here's what I think you should do, but I don't have the guts to do it myself. So if it all blows up, You guys are going to be able to flame me all year, and I'm cool with that. That's just the way it is. Like, and that's part of it. You know, it's like you gotta have courage behind your convictions, and that's what it was all about. So I get it.
Just a reminder: a lot of people drafted N'Keal Harry 2 years ago. So yeah,
no, I get that. That's the fire that I wouldn't want to stand in. But
even Hakeem Butler was a thing once, right? I just think, to me, I mean, like one of the big running backs that I talked about it, and I think you and I, Doc, had an argument about it. Trey Sermon, and when he got that draft capital, I was surprised. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I legit jumped out of my seat, and I'm like, oh. And I was on the show live. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes. The first thing that came to mind was you and Hamid. I'm like, oh wow. And I was so pumped up. But then I looked at it deeper. I'm like, damn it, he has like 3 running backs, like 17.
There's 17 guys there.
You know, but I'm still gonna take my chance at the scheme that he's in. Sermon, you know, I don't know. I like the talent. I see what he can do. Now he got to do it at the NFL level. But the thing is, Shanahan if he drafted a running back that high, he's gonna use him.
Agreed. And then it's gonna be, you know, can he do it? And can he catch the ball better than we think? And can he block? And you know, what's his role going to be? But it's that draft capital does matter.
They barely pass anyway. He doesn't need to catch.
It matters less.
Sorry. So, I mean, did you feel like you got sniped when you got taken 1 pick before you, Doc?
Trey Sermon,
or do you have him in Gamewell in the same tier where you didn't mind so much?
I wasn't as high on Trey Sermon as G was. We did debate it a little bit on the previous show, but I didn't feel like I got sniped. I was actually happy because I wanted nothing to do with him, and
you didn't feel like you had to take him.
No, I was out. I was like, I'm not interested, and that's fine. Like that's you know, difference of opinion there. I think he's got a really cool name, but that's where I get out.
Sermon in San Francisco. But Doc, I will say I love your the game theory of, okay, knowing you had the 205, knowing there were 2 quarterbacks you really like. Like I've got, even in a single quarterback, I've got Fields and Lance both ahead of Kenneth Gainwell. Honestly, I probably have Zach Wilson ahead of Kenneth Gainwell too. But knowing that you had both of them in the same tier, you were guaranteed to get one of them at 205. The idea of just in case Gainwell goes 204, probably not likely, but just in that the risk. Whereas, you know, there was zero chance that you wouldn't get at least one of the quarterbacks. So I like the thinking there. So, you know, you look at it, Gainwell 203, but if you really reverse those picks and put him 205, I guess it still looks bad from, I guess, what his ADP is. But again,
it looks a little early, but is it? Yeah, it's
that wouldn't have been crazy before the draft. I think everyone was kind of expecting that, like he'd be the 3rd, 4th, 5th running back off the board. So if this was done pre-draft, no one would blink at that at all. So It's just, if you're trusting that player evaluation and going on that more than the draft capital, again, thinking that no other running back got draft capital. Like at that point, if you're picking running back, you're choosing between everyone who's either a 4th round or 5th round pick. And I mean, no one really went to a great landing spot of that group. So if once those top 4 off the board, he's your next guy, you take it there. Because do you have a 3rd round pick in this draft?
I do. Yeah, I have the 303. It's one of those drafts where it's like they do the first 2 rounds and then they kick the second 2 rounds into August. So I have the 303 and the 304 as of right now.
So I get the idea of wanting to get the running back here before that big break, and thinking that if, you know, something happens, Gainwell could go up and you might be the first 3rd round pick. So if you really believe in him and think he can get the hype, I understand that the 203 again, it's pretty early. But I remember when you and I were talking about when you were making the draft, and you kind of sold me in on it at first. It's like, oh, Gainwell 203, but then you sort of talked me through your process through the team you had, and running back seemed like it was a real need. You know, I know less players are available, especially early in rookie drafts, but at a certain point, I do think, you know, the best wide receiver there was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I get if you really need a running back to not take the 4th round NFL draft wide receiver. So,
may I ask Doc a question?
Yeah, of course.
He's a Doc. This year, I saw a lot of NFL teams. They had like incomplete for physical, and just they didn't get enough data back. And then the whole COVID thing, and this is in regard to Kenny Gainwell. Do you really think, because he didn't play this year, obviously he had a lot of history with his family having COVID, deaths and all that. I understand that. Do you think if he would have played, and played the whole season, he probably would have gotten drafted higher? Do you really think players that aren't elite shouldn't sit out the season? I'm not saying they should do what they should do, but if you're not an elite talent like Penei Sewell, like Jamar Chase, that you already proved it.
Yeah.
Maybe you shouldn't, because I know you're protecting yourself right now, but not necessarily protecting your future.
Yeah, it's a good question. My take on that is looking at COVID through the retrospectoscope, because now COVID, at least in America and other parts of the world, it's a different story. But COVID is kind of going away, thank God. But at this time last year, COVID was scary as shit, and it still kind of is. And I, especially working in the medical field, I don't have an issue with anybody doing anything to protect themselves, because this thing kills people, and it kills young people, and it doesn't care. And I still see it in my practice every day. And I totally get the idea, what you're saying theoretically, of did he hurt his draft value because he opted out? I think he probably did. But here's the thing. He lost 4 relatives to COVID. That's got to have an impact on you psychologically. And my question to you, and I don't mean this in a facetious way, but how much would it impact his draft value if he was dead? And I don't mean that like hyperbole. Like, what if he got sick and he really ended up in the hospital or the ICU, or he died? I mean, Raquel Armstead was a guy, young, healthy, elite athlete, got taken out, went to the hospital twice, almost died. That's some scary, scary business. And that's not something to be trifled with. So I totally get your point. Yeah, he probably did hurt his draft capital, but now he's got a chance to make up for it. And he's in a decent situation. He's got a young quarterback, and he may show some of that promise that he did back in 2019 before the whole world went haywire. So that's kind of my take on it. I don't mean to be hyperbolic, and I'm not picking on you at all, but that's my take on it. Like, to be serious as a medical professional, like, this thing's not a joke. It's not.
I definitely think it impacted it, though, for sure. It seemed like there were definitely whispers that the NFL was kind of, anyone who opted out, they were viewed as. It's funny, this discussion was had before the draft. Did Chuba Hubbard hurt himself by going back to school? He had such a great 2019 season, and then last year didn't look as good. Would he have actually benefited from opting out? He got better draft capital than Gainwell, so the answer seems like no. They would rather you play poorly and grind it through than not play at all.
They want to see you play, and that's great. It's like, but now he's got the opportunity to kind of prove them wrong. And I think recency bias plays a big part into that, other than guys like Jamar Chase, who are elite talents. If you're kind of not in that group and you're in that lower tier, you definitely did hurt yourself, I think, by opting out. But I don't fault anybody for doing that. And now he's got a chance to make up for it.
One of the things they said about Jalen Waddle, a lot of people said that him coming back after that injury, they just expected him, like, I'm out, COVID season, whatever, I'm good. But him coming out and just gutting it out the rest of the season showed a lot. And
I respect that. I respect the hell out of that.
And a lot of people really, really put that as a note, and they respected that, and they just provided more value for his draft. Obviously, he wasn't going to get any higher than 6, to be honest. I mean, I didn't expect Waddle to go 6 overall. I mean, I had them in my mock draft, the Dolphins taking him, but I had them trading up to get him to the Chargers pick or something like that, but not top 6. I was like, holy smoke! But I love it.
And I think the one thing with Gainwell, just to quickly touch on this, the fact that he's a pass catcher, right? If we love Devontae Smith so much for the landing spot, we should also love Gainwell in that sense, that he has a chance to catch a lot of passes there. Do they use him more as a slot receiver just because the wide receiver room is so barren? They could use Smith and Gainwell both on the field, and it doesn't, that doesn't hurt either, because they could both
really
see starting
did intrigue
roles.
me too. That was after, like, I kind of made that pick, but then there was this talk about maybe they make him into he's kind of a slash running back wide receiver. I'm like, ooh, now I like it even more, like that's a layer that I hadn't considered, because they definitely have space, after Devonta Smith. They got Rieger, they got Greg Ward, they got Fulgham. How exciting are those guys? Not really. I think
he can be like Austin Eckler, what he was to Melvin Gordon. That's what he really reminded me of. Like I love Sanders.
Both Sanders and Gainwell could be fantasy valuable at the same time with that.
Yeah.
Good point, Kirsten. So one layer I wanted to just touch on was in superflex drafts, and really the only main difference is where the quarterbacks are going. And we're talking as Lawrence, the 106 in your draft, Doc, but it seemed like it was the exception. You had Lance and Fields, who we all view in the same tier as Lawrence, go basically a full round later.
There was mitigating
106 to 205 for Lance. So in Superflex, though, we're seeing the quarterbacks, especially that top tier quarterbacks, really bunched together. So I did 4 rookie drafts over the weekend. One's a 10 team, 2 12 teams, and a 14 team. And one of the interesting things there is the QB scarcity really does follow that. So you look at the 10 team, and in all the other instances, the top 3 picks were those same 3 quarterbacks. In the 10 team, though, it didn't actually happen. Lawrence went 1, but then Jamar Chase went number 2. Again, 10 teams, so there's less QB scarcity. You also have to start 4 wide receivers and 3 running backs, so both those positions do get a bit of bump at scarcity as well. So Jamar Chase going 2. I had the 104, so I was pretty ecstatic. Like, I almost felt like I was kind of stuck into drafting Najee Harris there. And then as soon as Chase went, I get Lance or Fields, so my buddy Akili had to make the choice of Lance, so I got Fields 104. I was pretty ecstatic. I didn't think I was getting Fields without. I thought I was going to have to trade up that 102 spot to get him, to be honest, and to get him 104 was pretty great. Zach Wilson went 108, Mac Jones 204, which, again, a little late for Superflex, but 10 team, it makes sense. And then you see 3rd and 4th round for the other 3, Mond, Mills, and Trask. 308 for Mond, 310 for Mills, 405 for Trask. Now in 12 team, what we do, I think the main difference is, so first off, it was Lawrence, Fields, Lance. I think the order I saw in all my drafts was always Lawrence first, Wilson 4th, Jones 5th. The real change is Fields or Lance. It seemed like that was in my drafts, it was 50-50 split. Half the time Lance went first, the other half Fields went first. So it's really just preference there. But Zach Wilson in my 212 team leagues, once he went 105, the next 106. So he's really not falling far, like to 108, for instance, in the 10 team. It seems like he's, I've seen some drafts where maybe he does fall a little bit, but pretty consistently, I think, the middle of the first round. And then Mac Jones 110 and 109. Again, this is both the 12 team leagues. So in that instance, as we get to that scarcity move up a little bit and you add those 2 extra teams, suddenly Mac Jones is a first round pick. Whereas in 10 team, not the case. Now, if you look at 14 team, the draft order at the top, again, adding those extra 2 teams, the QB scarcity really pushes it. This is the draft order in the 14 team. Trevor Lawrence 1, Justin Fields 2, Trey Lance 3, Najee Harris 4, and then Zach Wilson 5, Mac Jones 6. Wow. Even ahead of Kyle Pitts went next at 107, but that, and I know it in this league it's really tough to get a starting quarterback, and I don't blame him to go in 14 team. I'll go Mac Jones ahead of Kyle Pitts every day, just because that scarcity, you cannot replace that no matter how valuable the tight ends are in a 14 team Superflex league. You'll never be able to trade Kyle Pitts for any starting quarterback.
Yeah, that's really tough.
Maybe unless you really get the Kyle Pitts truther, and it's a really, like, maybe it's a Sam Darnold quarterback, but so just kind of the number of teams really changes the QB scarcity in Superflex. So just also be aware of that. But even in 10 team, like, the top 3 tier were the first 4 picks. So it's those guys are still elite, especially for this class.
I agree with everything you said. I just think in Superflex, people always think like, they don't realize Kirk Cousins fantasy point per game is like the equivalent of a Nick Chubb fantasy point per game. So you have to really think about the quarterback you're taking. And these 3, in my opinion, these 3 quarterbacks, Fields, Lance, and Trevor Lawrence, are quarterbacks that I think for years will average 20 points per game, or at least 18 points per game. So you got to think about it. Quarterback scarcity in Superflex is like, dude, gold mine, and that's why quarterback go draft like pick after pick. But it's just, to me, in a Superflex, I would expect the first 3 picks to be straight quarterback. After that, I can see anything else.
Even in the 10 team, like I was a little surprised Chase went. I thought there might be a possibility, but I had a feeling I was going to, again, be stuck deciding between Najee or do I take the quarterback in Wilson. It looks like your brother just showed up, Gerson. You thought it was at 6? No, I didn't say 7. I did not say 7 Atlantic. I said 7 Eastern. I was maybe sure of that.
All right, Jason, you can catch us on the replay.
That's the thing. Available on, available on, Going for 2 live on YouTube. You can replay that anytime. There's a podcast version too, so don't worry, Jason. You'll be able to hear everything your brother had to say, which I'm sure you don't hear your brother talk enough. So it's always great to hear Gerson.
Probably gets enough of it as it is.
Although right now he's not here to talk, so maybe that was not the time to say that joke. Bad timing on my part.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Okay, well, I'm glad, Doc. So I'm just quickly looking through these drafts, and if anything of note. Well, actually, I know maybe this is time to talk about the subject you want to talk about, Doc. And I guess we're closing in on an hour and a half, so maybe we should get to it now.
Yeah, for sure.
Late round players. So who's the guy that you were talking probably 3rd, maybe even 4th round? Who's the guy that you seem to be wanting to target?
Yeah, so I got a few guys, and they're all at the running back position, and I'll be brief. This is just kind of like my contingency plan what ifs. So I mentioned one already, Chuba Hubbard, in case Christian McCaffrey gets injured. Oh, Christian McCaffrey won't get injured 2 years in a row, right? Why not? Maybe it happens. Mike Davis 2.0, that certainly has value. Chris Evans on the Bengals. I know there's a lot of Mixon truthers out there. I'm not hating on Joe Mixon. I certainly like his talent. I don't know about the idea of him all of a sudden morphing into like this bell cow running back. I know he can catch the ball. He had a foot injury last year. He missed 9 or 10 games or something absurd like that. He didn't end up getting surgery, and nobody knows what the actual injury was, or at least I haven't gotten an actual report. I have a suspicion it might have been a Liz Frank. And if it's a Liz Frank ligament injury, those things can be bad. And if it rears its ugly head again, Chris Evans is a guy that you can get late that can really, step in and give you some value. And then the last guy is Jared Dokes in Miami. And he was a 7th round pick. And they have a few guys there. They have Ahmed. They have Gaskin. And you say to yourself, well, could a 7th round pick end up being a starting running back for an NFL team? Well, Myles Gaskin is the starting running back there, and he was a 7th round pick in 2019. So these are guys you can get late, maybe the late 3rd, 4th, or even undrafted free agents that could all of a sudden landscape changes. One guy gets hurt, and boom, you got yourself a big value.
Yeah, like someone was saying, especially Dokes. I mean, I think the Dolphins are one of the most coveted landing spots for a running back through the draft, and we were waiting. Okay, which guy's going to go there? Like if Gainwell went there, you probably wouldn't have been able to get him at 203, Doc. So,
yeah, good point.
Gerson, who are some of your late round targets?
They're mainly wide receivers, to be honest. I'm not very high on any running back. Is running back what we're breaking down, or
no? It could be any.
Just guys you like late.
Doc just really likes the running back. He's like me in that sense.
I like those no name guys, quote unquote, and then there's an injury, and all of a sudden they got a lot of value.
Oh yeah, what do you call it? Ambiguous backfield. That's what we try to target. I mean, no, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously his value rose, has risen or whatever you say. But other wide receivers I like is Dwayne Eskridge, Nico Collins, Anthony Swartz. But one wide receiver that, just kept dropping, Tylan Wallace. I was really high on Tylan Wallace. I love that guy's talent. Not good draft capital, though. It's just, to me, I think this year is the year that, well, not the year, but Lamar is going to break football again. Like, he's going to be they're changing the offense a little bit because they didn't draft all these wide receivers, and just the high draft capital for these guys too. I mean, what's his name went? Rashad Bateman went like 22nd, I think, or something like that. But
something like that.
25th. You're right around there.
One guy that I really just kept looking over and over at, Brevin Jordan. He's in a good spot. I mean, he's gonna get opportunities. He very disappointed us in very disappointing pro day. I mean, he ran like a 4.6, I think.
Yeah, he's an athletic guy. I like him.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like with him, I think opportunities matter a lot, and that comes with the same thing with Nico Collins too. That team is trash.
Yeah, they're gonna get opportunity, I think.
Yeah. Only quarterback that I would take outside those guys For me, it's Kellen Mond.
Sure.
I think Kellen Mond has the highest upside outside the top 5 quarterback, outside of Max. I think Max is my last ranked quarterback, I believe. I like Kellen Mond for the upside more than anything. I don't think if Tom Brady's playing till he's 50, yeah, you're not going to want to draft trash. And then the other quarterback to me, I'm good, man. Like, yeah, I'm good.
Well, I think just thinking with Trask, I mean, we talk about Mac Jones, his lack of mobility. I mean, it was 1.4 rush yards per game in his career in college. Kyle Trask wasn't much higher. I think it was 4 or 5 yards per game, whereas Kellen Mond is getting up there into the 20, 30 yards like we saw with Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields. Not quite Lance. I mean, he's not getting 1,000-yard seasons. But so, yeah, I'm of those three, I definitely like Mond the best as well.
And I'm going to say this Davis Mill hype, like, dude, stop. He only played, 7 games, 12 games, I think it was?
Oh, man. Superflex, Deshaun Watson's got a lot of pads to not playing this year. And then he could be a thing. So I'm not in love with him either.
Tyrod's there. The thing with Mills, though, I think I did take him 303 in one draft. Mond went 302. I really was hoping Mond was going to get there. And just sniped just before me, and Trask had gone in the second round. And it was a league where I've got Dak, I've got Lamar, but then Gardner Minshew is my QB3. So I felt at that point there was about 4 receivers that I really liked, and I was picking 4 picks later. So my thought was the same with Doc with the Kenneth Gainwell. Well, I'll get the guy that's the only – because after Mills, it drops pretty far. My plan with Mills, though, is going to be if he starts at all, I'm trying to flip him for a second. If I can get a second on a 303, I think that's the play, because the problem is I think we all expect Houston to be pretty bad next year. They're probably drafting a quarterback if Watson's not coming back. So Mills either has to play – if the path is he has to start and play so well that he plays them out of being able to draft a quarterback. And if he doesn't do that, he's getting Gardner Minshew and replaced. If he even starts at all. Maybe they put it all on Tyrod, and Mills is just a body that they have, and that never gets a chance too. So I think there is definite risk. If you're going to draft him again, like I did, he's not a guy you hold. I think Kellen Mond you're going to hold for a couple years. Kirk Cousins only has 2 years left on his contract. Maybe at that point they get out of them. Maybe Kellen Mond starts games in 2023. So he's a good hold for that. But the one guy I want to name, and so there's 2 guys that I've got in my 4 rookie drafts. I drafted in half of them. I got 2 shares of each. One's Anthony Schwartz, so Gerson already mentioned him. The next one for me is Larry Runtree from the Chargers, and this is ambiguous opportunity, right? Okay, Austin Eckler, yes, he's gonna be the designated pass catching back if anything else, but also get some goal line carries. But we saw last year they really split the goal line role through a bunch of different backs. Kalen Ballage, I think, ultimately ended up finishing with the most red zone opportunities for any running back on that team, and he was only there for a few weeks. It was a mishmash of different players, and yes, Austin Eckler was hurt for a big chunk of the year, but even before he was hurt, they were giving goal line carries to Joshua Kelly and a little bit to Justin Jackson. I don't really love Larry Runtree that much, but the opportunity is striking. I mean, I kind of have graded him similar to Josh Kelly last year. They kind of profile as similar players. So if he beats out Josh Kelly, he might be in line for some goal line work and some touchdown upside. So Larry Runtree, I've got a couple shares both in the 4th round. So he's someone that, if you get to the 4th round, and I like those running backs late, he seems to be the guy that I'm going towards more. I do like Jamar Jefferson, Kylan Hill, but I like Runtree's opportunity a little better, even though I liked both of those guys before the draft. Runtree had a bit better draft capital, and I think it's a bit better opportunity. But we're going to take this opportunity to head out now. So we've got Dr. Jim Freddy at TFS Doc, right? The fantasy sports doc for those. I always have to say it in my head to remember it. A lot of abbreviations here. Gerson's at Fantasy GDFS. God, Gerson, whatever you want to just remember, that's what the G stands for. And I'm at Senra says. I say it enough, you'll remember it all. Dynasty Gambit. So, Gerson, thanks for joining us. Did you have anything you wanted to share?
No, thanks for having me. I really wanted to bounce back from my last show with Doc and Hamid.
Yeah, man, no tech issues for once on the show. We had Hamid with some tech issues. We had you with some tech issues last time, but we made it through, so it was great. And it was great to have you on board again.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So, and of course, all the Going for Two live shows at Going for Two Live, at Going for Two as well, both on Twitter. And again, goingfor2.com/store, get all this great gear. So for Gerson,
one last thing that I'll throw in a plug for, like we talked about injuries, no injuries have happened yet, but when they do start happening, this is the book that you're going to want to have. Injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. That's my book. It's all about injury analysis, how to use it to really get good at anticipating things, reading between the lines, and making these moves, whether it's in redraft, dynasty, kind of how to approach these things and really kind of get a different take on it. I think there's a link on my Twitter, at my Twitter site. It's on Amazon right now. You can get the e-version, and I hope you guys check it out. I hope it really helps you out. And injuries are going to start happening, so you want to be ahead of the curve on that for sure.
So minimize a bit of your pain, even though players are obviously going through enormous amounts of it.
Exactly.
But yes, we as fantasy managers, we get that benefit a little bit. But hopefully we gave you the benefit of our knowledge here. I know some rookie drafts happening for all of us, and it's just some insight there to what exactly happened, right? We can talk mocks, we can talk potential, but now that we've gone through these rookie drafts, we can really see what these results were. So thank you, everyone, for joining in, all the listeners, viewers. Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Doc, for letting me be on the Dynasty Gambit now full time. Really happy. And
it's good stuff. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we'll see everyone in a couple weeks. So for Gerson, for Dr. Ferretti, I'm Kyle Senner, and this is the Dynasty